Hello everybody and welcome to Robin's TV Extra Time. Today we've got a cracker of a show in store for you. I've been saying that a lot of lately, and that's because City managed to get the win in their championship clash against Bristol City, against Sunderland. And I say the Robins were the ones that came out on top. It wasn't always plain sailing, but as we'll take a look at some of these key moments today, City got the job done, and that is what matters. I'm Alex Wood, your host for this one, and joined in the studio, as you can see, by former City defender, Lewis Carey. Lewis, what a game that was in the end. It's almost an unusual sort of 90 minutes as we take a look at it, sort of a big picture view. There was a red card, there was goals, and we'll take a look at all of that. But just your view of the game, what did you make of it? Well,
it's just really interesting because we do all the pre-match talk of how we think the game might look, how the game might go, and then a sending off in the first 5 minutes just changes everything. We'll go into more detail in a minute of whether it was or whether it wasn't. What that then did, though, that meant Bristol City had to try and make something happen. And Sunderland made it really, really difficult for them, and made it a challenge in the first half. And then all of a sudden the crowd started to quiet a little bit, didn't they? And there was a bit of nervous energy and tension, and all of a sudden the breakaway goal from Sunderland, it was an excellent individual goal. However, it could have been, it could have been stopped in different ways. Just totally changed like the halftime feeling around the place.
Really did.
And we had a lot of conversations in the studio what we think Liam Manning will say or do, and it seemed like he handled it perfectly, because everything we spoke about needed to change at halftime in the second half. Did, and it'll be all detail we'll go into in a moment. But yeah, just the energy and the forward running, forward passing, balls into the box, stressing the opposition, and in the end, City played it really, really well, because you can only play at times what's in front of you.
Absolutely.
And what was in front of you,
men.
exactly. Everybody says it's tougher against 10 men at times. I don't know. You got an extra man. Some people say it's easier against 10 men, but it never is. They made it a real challenge, and it was a really enjoyable game. And I think City were, really, I'd say, much deserved winners in the end.
Absolutely. I'm sure fans will be as well watching this. Thoroughly deserved. And we'll take a look at those chances upon reflection and where perhaps those key moments were. But first and foremost, let's start, as we always do, with the stats and kind of take a look at the numbers behind the game, really. And perhaps won't be surprised to see a lot of these heavily in favour of Bristol City. Starting there with, those headline figures. I mean, possession-wise, you'd expect to see that, but that's quite significant. 77%. The expected goals, XG. Is this evidence really of, one team being very much on top by virtue of having an extra man?
Very much so. The corners, not probably as many as I can remember in the game. I thought there was quite a lot. Or shots on target, not as many as I can remember. But it was the volume of shots. It was the volume of possession. It was the volume of the crosses and so on. There's never going to be as many offsides, but it was that. And then Jaws won. The Jaws one, I'm not sure how they define it with these stats, but that might be sort of after losing the ball, counter-pressing. That was a huge part of Bristol City's game today, especially second half, that allowed them to camp in the area, that kept the possession high, that kept the shots high and kept the expected goals high. And I think as when you look at that, you can see how, Sunderland were so stressed in, second half, made a lot of misdirected clearances or misclearances, a lot of lashing at the ball, whereas first half they were a little bit more controlled, whereas second half they didn't defend their box nowhere near as well as they did first half, but that was because of all of that down on the left-hand side of that stats.
Well, there isn't red cards necessarily referenced on the stats, but that is one area where perhaps Sunderland would beat City today. Of course, that was the big talking point, wasn't it, for us at least at half-time, and arguably upon reflection, the big sort of swing within the game itself. And this was just within the first sort of 5-10 minutes, wasn't it? Let's take a look at the clip. And I guess just reflecting on it, is this, well, you give us your thoughts really, but was this avoidable from a Sunderland point of view? Was it deserved? What do you think?
No, for me, from Bristol City fans' perspective, myself, I'm wanting to send it off. From a neutral, the spectacle ruins the game, but from a Sunderland and a fellow defender, that's, for me, it's not a sending off. It's once the ball's headed forward, Naki's already sort of falling forward, as you can see, and then Hume, the defender, tries to get behind him and stop his legs, although if he does touch him, he's happy that he does touch him, it stops a counter-attack. However, for me, I don't think there's enough intent to, I suppose, to be a red card. So for me, I think it was very, very harsh. And as a spectacle, can ruin the games at times because there was so much excitement before. But on the flip of that, it put a lot more pressure on Bristol City to make something happen in the game.
Absolutely. And, the question really is, what bearing does that then have on the game for both teams? And I guess what we see next is a spell where City really were on top. Again, by virtue of having, I'm assuming, that extra man, they were able to sort of pack out certain areas and press on. Yeah,
so it allowed, the wing backs to be a lot higher, like you see here, Pring on the last line at the top of the picture, McCrory on the last line. We got Wells to come into these sort of areas of the pitch. Now, for me, we would have preferred that to be like earthy and the forward players to keep knacking in the middle of the goal. But what it does, it pins the 4-4-1 back. So it means the centre backs are now right up the pitch. This is Zach, and it allowed them to put balls in the box. At times, it felt like we just threw the ball in the box because it doesn't, like, the half-time coming allows the manager to express what he wants to happen against 10 men. Whereas at times it's just the lads trying to find it out on the pitch, which is, quite a challenge at times. It's not something that you train very often. But we were talking when Alex was doing a commentary about, how do you break the teams down? Well, you have to move the ball quickly. It has to be a speeder ball. At times it is long shots, like we said at half-time, like the Vincent Kompany goal all those years ago for Man City against Chelsea. At times somebody's got to step up and make something happen. Got to change the sides quickly, and then soft crosses that create overloads. Got to counter press really well, and you've got to stop counter attacks. That's the main way that you that you break down a team that are going to sit in a low block.
Absolutely. And for Sunderland, say at this part of the game, they're just sort of staying in that shape, aren't they? Pretty rigid. And as you mentioned, it's about sort of moving that ball at speed. But to just highlight perhaps, the danger man, as he were, for Sunderland, Mayenda, gets the goal. But there were a few sort of, clips really that show what his game was. And I mean, you marked quite early on that this is, incredible dribbler with the ball. He just had a sort of a knack, didn't he, for finding space and driving forwards. But, how do you stop that as someone who's obviously been in that position?
Well, I thought he used his body great, and I thought he's always got the ball out of his feet, or he slows you down, then he speeds it up. And he was the one player in their team that when they were in a situation defending a low block, that he was going to make something happen by his ball carrying skills. And he drew players to him at times 2 and 3. But how do you stop it? He used his body really well. Again, this is excellent forward play from a number 9. He knew when to pass the ball, and he set up these little opportunities. And all of a sudden you're thinking, hang on, the one thing City can't do is have everybody forward and get done on the counter attack. So the way of stopping that at times, it's not something you want to talk in the public realm at times, but it is a foul. It is a tactical foul. But this situation here, this would be the foul now.
Yeah.
That's the way you bring them down, because you're unlikely to get booked in those situations. Whereas once you let him go and you free him up, like I said, he sucks players to him, he slows you down, and he knows exactly what he's trying to do with Zach here. He's trying to speed Zach up to then slow him down, to then cut inside on his left foot. And what I mean by speed Zach up, I mean he's getting Zach to run at a certain pace, so he runs past him so he can cut back inside. So once he cuts back inside, he opens up the whole goal, the one thing you don't want to do, and that's up to Knight or Tanner to then either make a tackle, but really it should be Zach keeping him down the line. Once you keep him down the line, Zach's left foot is then blocking the far post, and the goalkeeper's doing everything at the near post. Whereas once you open up the goal and you create that big distance and he shoots between your legs, goalkeeper's got no chance.
Yeah, absolutely. The producer was just saying 19 years old he is as well. He's a young lad, so he's got a promising career ahead of him if he keeps playing like that.
I really liked him. I thought first half, I thought he was excellent. Like I said, he was the outlet. He used his body well to take the ball, and he also found space to turn and run and push Bristol City back at times. But he was the only player I felt was going to impact the game for Sunderland.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm sure the XG on that, the drive forward was probably pretty low for any sort of XG fans among our viewers. But look, take us into, I guess, the minds of the players, even, to an extent, Liam as well, because half-time, 1-0 down, a lot of work to do. We know what we're going to see from Sunderland in the second half. What would the message be, do you think, from Liam to the players?
Well, the message from the fans was they wanted something to happen, right? But also they became very sort of quiet and a little bit, I wouldn't say booey, but like moaning because it wasn't quite,
edgy,
perfect. It was really edgy, yeah. So I think the one thing from the manager would have been like, listen, keep the belief and the understanding of what we're trying to do, what the game plan is. However, we have to stay patient and calm, and we have to move the opposition. How we move the opposition is with the quality of the football that we've done all season. So that is wing backs higher up the pitch. It's changed the sides. When you change the sides, you need to have forward runners. We didn't get enough forward runners first half and didn't move the ball quick enough. And then when the ball comes in the box, can we get numbers in the box, but can it be deliveries where we can allow people to arrive onto the cross rather than, I think a couple of clips we showed last week where people just smashing the ball across the box. There needs to be a little bit more care. And then the last one, like we said, if we drop, centre-backs higher, maybe have a shot at times, like we'll probably see later, but also to keep the ball in and counter-press really well. And the last part would be to stop counter-attacks. That would have been the message, though, just stay patient and calm.
And what did we see then when obviously the players come out for the second half? Obviously there was a change, George Tanner coming off, you, Eric Howard coming on. I mean, give us your thoughts generally, what was the thinking there? And what did we see from City in those sort of early moments in the second half? Was it, in terms of the play, more urgent, do you think it was?
Yeah, well, Tanner's more of a defender, isn't he? He's a ball-playing midfielder stroke defender, whereas Hirakawa is a ball carrier and a dribbler and make things happen. He's going to put balls in the box and he'll create the width. So the intent was to get more attacking players further up the pitch because they didn't need three centre-backs staying back. But if you look here, everybody's right up the pitch. But it was the speed there. It's the speed in which everything's done. Look, so it's it's more urgency. And also, when the ball goes wide, look, you see we've got forward runners. So when you get forward runners, it takes opposition back. Forward runner again from Wells. Then the ball's left inside the width for the 6-yard box, so McCrory can come and head the ball. It drops to Naki and there's opportunities. But so here we counter press. So everything we just spoke about is all happening here. The speed of ball on the edge of the box. Not people just lashing at it here like Bird to shoot over the bar or anything. Setting a teammate who was in a better position. So I thought the overall team play was excellent. Better crosses into the box like this to make things happen so McCrory can head it back across goal, keep the ball in counter press and move the ball quick, and little penalty shout there.
If you felt like a goal was coming.
Exactly that.
And that's what City got. Not too long after some of those clips. Perhaps the unknown quantity or the surprising element was who it was who was getting on the score sheet.
To a degree, we said he had a shot in the first half, didn't he? And he backs himself. Yeah, but if you look here, everybody's up the pitch. Look, we're trying to play the ball into the box, but we counter press. So it means it becomes a rash clearance. And then when the ball drops to Rob Dickie, listen, there's no doubt in his ability that he can strike a ball. He passes the ball with lovely technique, so there's no reason why he can't strike the ball. And like we said, he had one first half, uses the ref there, and then bends it around the last defender. And an excellent goalkeeper has no chance. But it's interesting because he gets dip, swerve on a knuckleball. Normally a knuckleball goes straight, but that one's come back in as well as you look there. And it just felt like something was going to happen. And if we scored, it did feel like the floodgates were going to open. That was the feeling we got.
I was going to say, what did that then allow? What did we see from City, I guess, following the goal? You mentioned, it didn't feel like it was quite opening of the floodgates, but it definitely gave them that platform, didn't it, to really push on?
Yeah, well, it lifted the crowd. It lifted the crowd, and all of a sudden, once you lift the crowd, the boys feed off that energy. But also, they did what they would have spoke about at half-time. Keep doing what they're doing there. Put the balls in the box. The clearances are becoming more rash from the Sunderland players. They're becoming more tired because you're moving the ball quicker. It's burning the legs of the defenders. And they're not getting up the pitch like Mayenda did in the first half as well in the second half. So it would have been to keep doing what we're doing, and hopefully the second goal will come. And I think... all of it was much deserved.
Absolutely, and perhaps one player who really stood out, certainly in the second half for his performance, was Ross McCrory. It felt like he was everywhere, at different points in that particular game. He gets his goal, gets the winner. He scored a few weeks ago as well, so we know he can do it. But in terms of the impact, McCrory had on today's game, how would you sort of surmise his performance? Well,
he had a huge impact, and the managers end up making the right call, moving him at half-time. For me, when it initially happened, I was a little bit more sorry, like keep him on the right side, because he was making the box and he was having headers at the second post that were causing problems in the first half. But as we see here, this is something he's really good at. He's a threat from set plays, he's a threat from crosses because of the way he jumps, his timing and everything. Here, lovely contact on the ball, keeps his head forward, lovely care. Doesn't have to swing hard at it and lash at it, and gets a shot on target. But again, that creates a confidence and a buzz. Same thing. ball goes wide, there's a forward runner. Forward runners drag defenders out of position. Pressure on the opposition, stressing them, means that you get poorer clearances. All of that happens in the game here. So Mehmeti, a lovely little forward run. Earthy looking for the pullback. Ball into the box. Poor touch, but you can follow the play because they counter-press really well all game. So McCrory here, he's really coming in to counter-press just in case the balls give away, not necessarily thinking that it's going to land like this. And again, it's not a lash, it's a brilliant strike, keeps it low. You know, and you earn your rewards with the little deflection because there's so many numbers in and around the box, in and around the goalkeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he might be a contender for player of the match today. I don't know what your thoughts were in terms of you got the winner, but who else maybe stood out to you with their performances today?
That's a really good question. I thought, like you just said, McCrory there, the volume of touches he had in the opposition box for a wing-back was probably a lot today. So I think the chances in the maintaining possession with the high stats they had and the volume of shots, I think a lot of them were from him. But, you know, you got people like Naki up top who's not getting any efforts at goal, not really getting any clear-cut chances, but what he was doing, occupying defenders, meant that you could get Earthy and those boys running forward. I thought Knight, again, as always, exceptional. But, yeah, McCrory's definitely up there for the man of the match shout.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're recording this, of course, post-match, and there's still a couple of championship games to be played this evening. So won't show a table because it might be subject to change. But what won't, perhaps, is the fact that City are in fifth. Where they started the day, but it's where they're going to end the day on 67 points. And that really does, you know, that was the big objective, wasn't it? If City can win today, get a positive result and sort of cement their position within the playoffs. Not quite guaranteed just yet, but a huge boost, wasn't it? A huge boost in terms of, you know, where we are and where we finished the day. Very
much so. With teams around City at the moment not being able to, you know, string 2, 3, 4 results together, to get the, you know, 3 home wins on the trot and a couple of away draws, and so I think it's been an excellent, you know, it's been an excellent sort of 6, 7, 8 weeks for Bristol City. And to beat the team that's a couple of places ahead of you, have been doing so well all season, I think is a little bit of a statement. But it'll also be a statement that if they make the playoffs, I'm sure they will now, I think it'll let those teams know that, you know, we're here to get promoted. You know, you guys might have been up there at the top of Sheffield United and Sunderland all season, but they've shown in that performance today that they can overrun the opposition, they can overpass the opposition, and they can cause enough threats to beat the better teams in the league.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, that seems like an optimum point to wrap today's show. Robin's TV Extra Time, what a message, of course. Belief, it's happening. Certainly for Lewis Carey, it seems like it's happening. But look, sets up Monday's game, doesn't it, against Luton Town, who are fighting for survival at the wrong end of the table. But for City, at least, if they win, again, another huge step towards their goal of finishing in the top 6. But thank you very much, Lewis, for your thoughts. That does bring us to time here. Robin's TV Extra Time. The win today, of course, another step in the right direction for Bristol City with a 2-1 win at home against Sunderland. We'll be back here on Monday, Easter Monday, for the trip to Kenilworth Road, Luton Town. Kick-off from 3 o'clock. We'll be live here on Robin's TV from 2:30. Do join us if you can. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.